Wait to spast. Нет. Бить Тагилу? Нет. Выйти в лесу. Может быть. Все, поехали фармить денежки.
The objective in any Trackmania game is to drive as fast as you possibly can to the finish line, and compete for the top records on the leaderboards. So it's essentially made for speedrunning competition. There are individual leaderboards for each track in the game, and on every leaderboard, thousands of players have attempted to become the best over the years. But F9 stands out as a particularly interesting track. It has such an incredibly rich history of innovation and improvement, because on this track, there are seemingly no limits to how far players are willing to go in order to win. Welcome to the world record history of Trackmania's F9.
Наверное, не хочу.
Let's start by taking a look at the track. The route on F9 is pretty simple, consisting of only left turns and jumps that goes round and round in a spiral with increasingly higher speeds. The formula for going fast on this track is having good speed management, maximizing how much speed you're able to carry into each jump, through each turn, and after every landing. If you go a little bit too fast, you'll launch right off the track. And if you slow down too much, well, you won't get a very fast time. Already in the early days, the top players were tethering right at the edge of this limit, and trying to push the track record as low as they could. The first record ever uploaded to the leaderboard.
Так, наша цель — это деньги. Деньги мы будем зарабатывать путем фарма вещей, нужных для постройки убежища. Мне нужны гофры и изолента KW. А, нет, они кектейп называются здесь. Что-то ящики не заспаунились нифига. Мотор — это хорошо. Сумка не заспаунилась. Тут компьютер не заспаунился. Ладно. О, САС. Я застраховаться забыл. не заспавнился. Так, мы пойдем по задней части всех магазинов. Потом зайдем в Оли. Залутаем Оли. Там наибольший шанс нахождения гофр. И после этого выйдем. О, твердое топливо, это 1070. Точнее, не твердое, а сухое, драй. Что-то в этом рейде сумки толком не спаунятся. Ну ладно, зато я нашел САС и твердое топливо. Хорошо. Заберу, наверное. По крайней мере, пока. Справа кто-то есть. Так, последняя остановка. За весь рейд я слышал выстрелы только от одного чувака, который заспавнился возле Оли. Блин. А потом пошел туда, где я заспавнился. Так что вряд ли я с ним пересекусь. Это чьи-то другие выстрелы. В подвале, похоже. Не уверен. Я бы парочку автомобильных батарей вынес на самом деле. О, гофра. Так, надо будет распродать убежище сегодня. Разобраться, что сейчас стоит много, что не очень. Вообще шус возьму. Потом выкину, если надо будет. Фар стил. Да, батарейка, по идее, дешевая. Ни одного кека не нашел. Но основное место для лутинга кеков здесь. Так что, может быть, еще найду. Такое чувство, что здесь уже кто-то прошелся. Капец. Может быть, он полутал? Не похоже. Значит, игрок здесь был. Ну, либо другой дикий, но это, наверное, маловероятно. Либо совсем плохо заспавнилось, но это тоже маловероятно. Говно собачье, жлоб вонючий. Не здесь. Плохо видно слишком. Рискованно не буду. Блин, на самом освещенном месте. Но, в принципе, если я выживу, достаточно прибыльно будет. Нет, наверное. Вообще не страшно. Плохо, что кека ни одного не нашли. Хотелось бы построить второй туалет, чтобы начать крафтить рожки. Мне, во-первых, 4 штуки нужно, а во-вторых, не очень дорого продаются сейчас. 1000, наверное, 200. Этого я боялся. Я не застраховался, как назло. Ну ладно.
Leaderboards was a 4608, set by the player Iron Dragons, driven on the 27th of January 2006, the same day as the game released. But this run was far from optimized. On the release day, the world record would be improved 5 more times, down to a 4479, driven by the player Peticon. Over the following 2 weeks, the record would continue to drop lower and lower. On the 7th of February 2006, the player Xenon achieved a time of 4329. This was a really strong record, considering it was driven 1.5 decades ago. Xenon's run had no big visible flaws. He had good racing lines and great speed management on every jump, maintaining a lot of momentum after each landing, and setting a very tough benchmark to beat for anyone who wanted the F9 record. But sadly for Xenon, the record wouldn't stand for as long as it probably should have, because only 3 months later, the player Kari would take to the track and achieve a 4306, using a new trick. That trick was to air brake. On every single jump, Kari tapped the brake mid-air, which for whatever reason stops your car's rotation, and it allowed Kari to land perfectly flat on every jump, building up much more speed throughout the race. It's hard to imagine a time where the air brake was a revolutionary technique in Trackmania, as it now stands as one of the most fundamental tricks we know.
Так, давайте, наверное, за дикого сходим. Попробуем с рогов чего-нибудь залутать.
But players back in 2006 didn't have any guides or tutorials to go off of. They had to figure
Доброе
this
утро,
out
Ирина
on their
Витальевна,
own,
если вы смотрите.
and Corey managed to use the air brakes on F9 to great effect, beating the world record by 23 hundredths of a second. Corey wasn't done yet though. He really liked the track F9, claiming it as his favorite in the campaign, and over the course of the year 2006, he improved his own world record 4 more times, down to a 42.53, doing the same strategy but with more refined racing lines. Throughout 2007, the record was improved a bit further by players like Marvin, DLG, Jerry, and Chinran, but it wasn't until March of 2008 that F9 would get its first truly strong world record, when Jerry achieved a 42.31. Even for today's standards, this is a great time, and it was driven 13 years ago. Jerry had impeccable speed on every jump on the track. It should be noted that in the old Trackmania games, you cannot afford to land on the grey border of the track, known as the Ramstein border. If you do, you'll get a so-called landing bug, where there's a high probability of flipping upside down or losing all your speed. And Jerry was cutting each jump extremely close to the border, taking the tightest possible lines. And he beat the old world record by 6 hundredths of a second. In April of 2008, 1 month after Jerry's record, Nadeo would release their brand new, more polished Trackmania game, Trackmania Nations Forever, and most of the player base moved over to try it out. The community at the time got the idea to recreate the campaign tracks from Nations.
Я выйду. У меня неплохая броня, которую я починю и буду использовать. Большой рюкзак, который я, наверное, возьму в следующий рейд. 35 тысяч рублей. Это уже мелочи. Роги до сих пор живы. Можно эту деревню лутануть быстренько. Где здесь этот туалет со смайликом? Не здесь. Гречка. А, вот он. Хорошо. Еще одна бронеразгрузка. В этот раз тоже не заспавнился? Или тайники не рандомные, просто некоторые убрали? Пока что я склоняюсь к этой версии. Блин, там флешка взорвалась. Так у меня будет больше шансов выжить. Так, мне не дробь, а меня же кам. Я очень заметный из-за своего огромного рюкзака. Кто-то вызвал дрон. Это тело? Нет, это камень. Скорее всего, тут все залутано человеком, который кинул флешку. И сумку потрогал. Да, видите, лутали. И он, скорее всего, вышел.
Nations ESWC in Nations Forever, so that they could keep competing for the
Блин. Грот, наверное. Нет, подождите. Блин. Очень плохие выходы. Я забыл, что этот выход только у чувака всегда работает. Не через всю карту бежать. Так, ну коттеджи наверняка уже залутали. Лучшее, что я могу сделать, это, наверное, просто быстренько добраться до выхода. Это займет минут 10. Не было бы у меня двух неплохих броников, я бы не стал этим заниматься, просто бы вышел. Что-то я хрип немножечко. Может, здесь толком не лутались? Контаки это неплохо. Надо сейчас будет заняться разгребанием схрона, я думаю. Так, это должны были залутать, но я на всякий случай проверю. Угу. Ожидаем.
Ну чё, попадос вам тут всем залетные.
Дроп летит. В принципе, возможно, имеет смысл убить того, кто его вызвал. Залутать его. Того коттеджа, что ли? Будет он меня стрелять, нет? Видимо, нет. По крайней мере, пока что. Вон дроп. Будет ли стрелять тот, кто вызвал дроп? А где тот, кто вызвал дроп? Hello, hello. Чувствую, пристрелят меня. Спрячут к нам. Никто никого не убьет, даже странно. Ладно, я, наверное, вытащил больше всего из этого дропа. Мне вообще грех жаловаться. Гофры — это очень хорошо. Опять-таки, кеки почему-то не падают. Этот контейнер же не лутается? Зато вот этот лутается. Я что-то слышал. Мне не понравилось. Скорее всего, на этой скале кто-то лежит.
Ну, шкура цела уже
это бот.
неплохо.
Так, этот забор я хрен перепрыгнул. Надо бы все эти ХЗ продать.
Заебись, удачно зашли.
Реально. Вот это уже не очень удачно. Хорошо, все на месте. Сколько мне нужно SSD-шников? Один. Хотя $150 сейчас стоит. А почему у меня количество потраченного не увеличилось на $700? Все еще не увеличилось, плохо. Мне нужно какое-то оружие.
records on them in the new version. And this idea is what gave birth to the TM and Race campaign. The TM and Race campaign is a complete remake of the original ESWC campaign tracks. made in Trackmania Nations Forever. The idea of the campaign was to keep the track route the exact same, while giving the tracks a fresh look with the new decoration blocks that were introduced in Trackmania Nations Forever. And it was here on TMN Race F9 that the competition for the record would continue. But it got off to a bit of a slow start. After the TMN Race campaign released, the player Baron would quickly achieve a 42-second run on TMN Race F9, but nobody could get close to the 42:31 achieved on the original track by Jerry. Part of the reason why was that Nadeo had slightly altered the physics in Trackmania Nations Forever. They made the Formula car heavier, which resulted in harder impact landings, making it impossible to maintain as much speed after each jump as on the original track. This left players feeling unsatisfied, as they weren't able to match their records from the old game. Because of this, and the fact that Nations Forever now had its own campaign of 65 new tracks, neither TMN Race F9 or the original F9 saw much action. Players were simply busy competing for other records at the time. Over the next few years, Nations ESWC would see less activity as a whole, due to the game's Starforce drivers being incompatible with Windows 7. So if you had a computer with any modern operating system, you could no longer access Nations ESWC. Every now and then, there would be an occasional record improvement on TMN Race F9, with a player shaving off a few hundredths, but it would take until 2014 for the spark on F9 to be reignited. That year, the Trackmania shortcut legend Nino created a team called Fastest Way Only. Their mission? To shortcut as many official campaign tracks as possible. At its inception, the group consisted of Nino and 4 other very dedicated Trackmania shortcut players. The group would instantly gain notoriety and status in the community, as they were one of the first real shortcutting teams in the
Мы сделаем следующим образом. Зайдем через основной вход, пройдем к Расмуссену, залутаем его, пройдем в левый магазин, залутаем его. После этого пройдем в Гашан, залутаем его. Сначала золотые цепочки, потом еду. Пройдем по задней части Гашана до Оли, залутаем там все. Зайдем в Оли и Оли залутаем. После этого пойдем на выход. Выход будет там. Бот орёт. Со стороны Оли чувака.
Сука, ёбнули нашего!
На втором этаже.
Ебашки, парика, нахуй!
Нет? Ладно. Надо торопиться. Эти боты меня замедлили довольно сильно.
Девка ебаная! Ебать его! Да ну нахер! Сройся!
Этот рейд уже окупился с помощью тетрисов. Охренеть. 4 тетриса. Там была ботан. Похоже, уже залутали. Не один. Нифига себе. Вообще, наверное, лучше будет сделать так. Блин, еды нет. Здесь у него есть вода. Блин, БТ. Надо забрать. Невозможно, не дойду до выхода из-за нехватки воды и еды. Зря потратил всю стамину. Блин, если я умру, будет очень печально. Нет. Ну мне не повезло с этими дикими, конечно. Блин, жалко, там было очень хорошее оружие у этих ребят. Особенно вот эта вот М-ка, это практически топовая М-ка. Надо же было им выбить мне живот ровно в том рейде, где я не взял ЦМС. И самое что обидно, я не застраховался. Так бы хоть свое добро по страховке получил. О, засчитали. Хорошо. Я их не забрал.
The game. The players in the team were not only great at discovering new shortcuts, but they also had the patience and determination to grind a track together for hours on end, until one of them successfully managed to pull it off. After seeing what Fastest Way Only were doing, many players wanted to join the group, and their recruitment rules were pretty straightforward. The way to get accepted into Fastest Way Only was by proving your skills, and doing a new shortcut on an official campaign track that nobody else had done before you. So naturally, whenever a new shortcut idea was shared in the community, a lot of players rushed to the track to try to be the first person to pull it off, so they could become a Fastest Way Only member. In December of 2014, the player Ors discovered a potential shortcut on F9 that caught the Trackmania community's attention. You see, F9 only has 2 checkpoints, one placed here after the first few jumps on the track, and the other one here, 2 turns later. But there were huge portions of the track that had no checkpoints at all, which meant that in theory they could be skipped. Ors' shortcut idea was to drive the first 2 checkpoints as normal, and then on the big jump after checkpoint 2, he would take off at full speed to the left and skip one of the ramps. In order to do this, Ors turned his car completely sideways on the jump, so he could perform a trick called the bug slide when he landed. As when you land at 90 degrees sideways and drift in Trackmania, you can do a very sharp slide while preserving your speed. You then
Моя главная ошибка в прошлом рейде была в том, что я побежал в конце. Мне нужно было спокойно идти, а бежать уже там, где могут быть боты, перепрыгнуть через стену. Блин. Чё это он меня не начал стрелять? Короче, можно стрелять только в голову, я понял. Это кек? Да, это кек. Выход у меня, по идее, будет железная дорога. Да. Что здесь сыр? А, это плексиглаз. Вопросов нет. Я, скорее всего, здесь первый, но лут все еще очень плохой. Даже немножко странно. Опа. Уже не первый. Либо бот залутал. Ну, кек взял и ладно. Это позволит мне построить туалет. Стреляли, я не понял. Оттуда? Можно умирать, когда тебе в голову стреляют? Спасибо. Хотя бы живот мне не выбил. Будет тяжеловато. Надо было его рюкзак забрать. Как назло дроп летит. Я в принципе ничем толком не рискую. Могу исходить. Единственное, что маневрировать толком не смогу. Рядом кто-то есть. Хотите мне сказать, что это был звук самолета? Что-то не верится.
пацаны.
Чуть не помер. Интересно, я его слышал? М62 надо забрать. Мелданин. Будет сложно дойти до выхода. Там будет много диких. Второй вариант это пройти там тоже будет много диких. Наверное, вот так пойду. Очень уж я не люблю перестреливаться с дикими справа. Ба-ба-ба. Плохой звук. Как будто кто-то пробежал на один шаг. Бот за стеной. Досадно. С пистолетом Карова в грудь меня убил. Что-то я еще ни разу не выжил, по-моему, сегодня. Возьму, наверное, Мосинку. Наушники. Пойду в лес, буду убивать ботов с 40 плюс метров. И без брони. Как-то плохо рейды сегодня идут. хоть туалет построю. Не буду брать с собой медицину. Пойду в туалет схожу.
Instantly launch off the next ramp and try to land back on your wheels, while maintaining enough speed to make the final jump directly to the finish road. It was estimated that this approach could save upwards of 1 second if done well, which in Trackmania is a big deal. But what if there was also another shortcut that could save even more time? Because amidst the hype around the ore shortcut idea, the player Error discovered a shortcut that could shave off even more time, if it were possible. His idea was to drive to the second checkpoint as normal, then make a U-turn, gather speed, and try to climb over the road border and drop directly into the finish, which clearly was the shortest path to the finish line. But was it actually possible? The biggest problem with Error's shortcut idea was getting enough speed to clear the gap between the road and the finish, mainly due to this booster. After doing a U-turn in the checkpoint and driving the track in reverse, the booster becomes an anti-booster that you cannot simply drive normally across. However, there is a trick in Trackmania called the anti-boost skip, where by driving with extreme precision, it's possible to drive on the grey border in between the anti-booster and the wall without losing speed. But even if you pulled off this trick, and managed to perform a good wall climb, the jump to the finish was questionable. In order to clear that gap, you needed to somehow generate more speed. Most players were convinced that it was impossible, but Error insisted that it could be done. He kept trying the idea, and on the 14th
Блин, где он? Я не вижу. Что-то как-то день сегодня вообще не задался. 117, кстати. Без прицела.
of December 2014, Error surprised everyone when he uploaded this run to the leaderboards, a 37:42 with the U-turn shortcut. At first, people were extremely hyped to see such a big shortcut being done, but when analyzing the replay file, players discovered some strange anomalies. First of all, he had a very slow start, losing almost a second to Marvin up to the first checkpoint. And then, in the turn before the second checkpoint, he drifted right into the wall, seemingly without losing speed. But the most absurd part of the run was the ending, where Error drove right across the anti-boosters without losing speed. He was, in fact, gaining speed from it. Error claimed that this was a 1 in a million bug, which allowed him to gain speed from anti-boosters. And knowing how buggy Trackmania can be, it sounded somewhat believable. But after seeing the run, some players checked the replay file in the in-game validation tool, and discovered that despite the claim of a new bug, the run wasn't legitimate. The in-game validation tool checks whether or not a player's inputs matches their record. Trackmania's physics are 100% deterministic, which means that if you do the exact same steering inputs, the game will produce the exact same result. The validation tool ran a simulation of Error's inputs, and the end result it got was completely different, meaning that Error must have modified Trackmania's physics himself. The run was promptly removed from the leaderboards, and Error later admitted to using a Trackmania cheat client to achieve the run, that allowed him to gain speed from driving across anti-boosters. Despite two big shortcut ideas being discovered, the real world record on TMN Race F9 was still a 42:48, driven the intended way by Marvin. But how about an even crazier shortcut
И
idea?
до 40 плюс метров.
You see, around the same time, Nino, the mastermind behind Fastest Way Only, discovered an absolutely wild shortcut approach on the track. In 2008, when the TMN Race campaign was created, they used some of the new scenery blocks to give the tracks a fresh look. And as it turns out, this new scenery can be heavily exploited. More specifically, this airship. What Nino discovered is that you could take a wide line through the second checkpoint, drift and then angle your car towards the left on the jump. And then, with a very specific speed, you could land on the back of the airship and bug slide off of it to try to reach the finish road. If possible, this idea would likely save even more time than the Oars shortcut jump, but it was far more difficult. The weird geometry of the airship block made it very difficult to bug slide on. Most of the time you would jump on the airship, try to drift and nothing would happen. Or you'd crash right into the red fin at the back of it, instead of launching off to its side. And once in a blue moon, when you finally launched off, the distance you had to clear to land on the road looked absurd. But maybe with a phenomenal bug slide, someone could make it to the other side. TMN Race F9 now had three competing shortcut ideas: the Oars jump, Error's wall climb, and Nino's airship nose bug, all tethering right at the limit of what was possible in the game. And the race was on to see which one of these shortcuts would be done first. But amidst the hype around all the shortcut ideas, one player would first set a new normal way world record, and you might have heard of him before. It was none other than Pablo GD, who in January of 2015 drove a 42:32 on the track, beating Marvin by 1600ths of a second, and raising the bar just a little bit higher for anyone who wanted to beat it. Shortly thereafter, players gathered on community servers to grind TMN Race F9 together, both Fastest Way Only members and aspiring shortcut players alike, trying the idea that they deemed the most possible. But after a few days, and then a few weeks, and several months of trying later, nobody had succeeded. Most players had lost interest, but Fastest Way Only pushed onward, still believing in their idea. 1.5 years would pass, until the summer of 2016, where Nino, the team's leader, decided that enough was enough. He wanted to see the shortcut done once and for all, so he opened a public server and put up a huge prize pool of the in-game currency coppers to whoever managed to set a new world record with a shortcut. Nino's online server had just one rule, and it was that driving the normal way was forbidden. If you finished a run the normal way, you would be permanently banned from the server, but apart from that, you were free to shortcut the track however you'd like. The community gathered on Nino's server to try to once and for all break the record. And on the third day of the project, perhaps surprisingly, it was Pablo GD who got this run.
Да как? Наконец-то. С Лидексом еще не хватало умереть. Знаете, я был бы не против выжить в этом рейде. Я даже не буду пытаться убивать ботов без брони. окраина? Да. Очень плохо видно. Не знаю, это ЧВК был или бот. Если бот, то я, наверное, хочу его убить. Он отсюда стрелял. Похоже, все-таки ЧВКшник. Как бы мне сейчас в спину не прилетело. $8:20. Через 2 часа у меня будет перерыв. Я буду заниматься домашними делами и ждать доставку еды. Когда привезут продукты, я приму их и пойду в зал. После этого пообедаю, искупаюсь. Наверное, продолжу заниматься домашними делами. А вот после всех домашних дел уже вернусь к Таркову. комбикорм.
A 41.76, beating his own world record by over half a second. Finally, at long last, a shortcut had been proven to be possible on F9. And though the group had finally succeeded, they weren't done yet. Pablo DD's success with the Orse jump inspired many to try Nino's airship nosebug, and he the first person to set a world record with it. But because Pablo had gotten a great time with the Orse jump, the margin for error was much slimmer. At this point, it was no longer enough to beat the normal way record of 42.32, you had to go up against 41.76, which would prove to be a tall order. The players grinding the airship shortcut eventually got many runs faster than the normal way record, but no one managed to beat Pablo. They knew that all that was missing was one clean landing after the nosebug, and the record would be set in stone. But somehow it just didn't happen. The airship nosebug tended to produce really awkward landing angles, and no one at the time managed to get it clean enough to beat 41.76. It would take another 9 months of tireless grinding by the shortcut players, until finally, on the 18th of March 2017, Reiso got this run.
With
the airship nosebug. With this run, Reiso could well-deservedly join fastest way only, after pulling off one of the most difficult shortcuts in the history of the game. This run was the end result of over 2 years of trying by multiple players. Out of the thousands of attempts players had poured at the shortcut, this was the one majestic flight that cut straight across F9 and landed cleanly on the other side, saving 0.4 of a second. To most players, this was it, the ultimate F9 record. Perhaps there was still a little bit of room for improvement by executing the bug more cleanly, but the consensus at the time was that nobody bothered to try it, because it had taken so long to be done for the first time. 1 year later, near the end of 2018, Fastest Way Only members ranked the top 50 shortcuts the team had ever done, and the members ranked Reiso's F9 record as second place on the list. It was a monumental record, and nobody wanted to go up against it, except for Reiso himself. Reiso enjoyed playing the map, and he knew that there was still a little bit of time to be saved. So only a few days after the top 50 records list was published, Reiso was playing the map, and incredibly enough, he managed to improve his own world record again, down to a 41.15. In his new world record, Reiso got a nosebug that landed much closer to the finish, and he saved 20 hundredths of a second. Reiso was just on another level on TMN Race F9. He had now done the Nino airship shortcut twice before any other player could even do it once. TMN Race F9 had now been completely destroyed by two big shortcuts, and for a long time it seemed like that was that. But as more time passed, some players started re-examining the third shortcut idea on F9, the error wall climb. What if players in the past were too quick to disregard it as impossible? In 2020, the two Korean players Hardtack and Twins decided to try the error wall climb to see if there was any way to make it possible. The first thing they did was modify the track to remove the booster completely and try to figure out if they could reach the finish. And just like players before them had discovered, the finish seemed to be just barely out of reach. But then they had a bright idea, because they were trying to wall climb on the TMN Race version of F9. But in the older game, Trackmania Nations Esports World Cup, the car is a little bit lighter than in Nations Forever. And this not only might make the car jump higher, but it would also allow you to climb the wall with more ease. The original F9 leaderboards had basically been untouched for the past 12 years at this point. Marvin had gotten the world record back in 2013, but the game was largely a ghost town, as nobody had computers that ran Windows XP or Windows Vista. The Korean brothers, Hardtack and Twins, didn't have computers that old either.
Не хочу в лагере секом бежать. Дикие, скорее всего, еще не заспавнились.
Служивый!
Супер. Оба креста сделал. Первый бот, которого я убил, он был с... Где? Второй раз не попал. Я сам квесты, которые хотел.
Either, but they thought of something clever, and that is using a virtual machine. Virtual machines make it possible to simulate a version of Windows inside of Windows. You can effectively run a computer inside of your computer. Early in 2020, Hardtack and Twins managed to launch Trackmania Nations Esports World Cup on a virtual machine running Windows XP. They now had access to the game, which was a golden ticket to joining Fastest Way only, but upon launching the track, they noticed a big problem. The frame rate was horrible. Virtual machines require a very powerful computer to run smoothly, and they could only at best achieve 30 frames per second, which made precise tricks such as the anti-booster skip and the wall climb even harder. But despite that, Twins was really motivated to overcome the shortcut. He played the track every day for 7 to 8 hours, trying countless times to get past the anti-booster without losing speed, just to have one chance at the ending wall climb. As Twins is a keyboard player, it was all the more difficult to do the very quick taps to adjust his line to get past the anti-booster. Any small error would result in speed loss and make it impossible to reach the finish. After 4 days of playing, he'd gotten almost 100 anti-boost skips, but he had yet to get a launch into the finish. All he needed was just that one run where everything worked. And at long last, he would be rewarded for his patience, when on the 6th of April 2020, Twins got this run on F9. $39.63, saving 2.5 seconds over the previous world record by Marvin, and also beating the TMN Race F9 record by Reiso by over 1.5 seconds. Twins had just proven the final shortcut idea possible on F9, getting a new world record and successfully joining Fastest Way Only. To most people, the track now seemed complete. It was a perfect story, with 3 out of 3 shortcuts being successfully done by the players, due to their determination and their effort. All the shortcuts were unique in their own way, but with the shared goal of pushing the track record closer to perfection. But what more could realistically be done on F9 now? Or perhaps that's the wrong question to ask, because if you only think about what can realistically be done, you won't end up thinking of something extraordinary. All along, the question that players have asked themselves on F9 is what more can unrealistically be done? None of the shortcut ideas were seen as realistic when they were conceived of, but because players tried them regardless, they ended up raising the bar of the competition much higher. In every competition, it always takes someone to challenge what we currently believe is possible to advance us to a new level, and the answer often lies in the unrealistic. The player Ors knew this when he discovered the first shortcut on F9 in 2014, and 6 years later, he returned to the track with an even crazier idea. On the 20th of May 2020, Ors got this run on TMN Race F9. $39.86. What Ors had discovered is that it's possible to do a trick called the Uber bug. Landing sideways and drifting in Trackmania will let you do a trick called the bug slide, which is a very powerful drift with a lot of grip. If you'll remember, it was also used on the landing in Ors' original shortcut jump from 2014. If you bug slide and crash into a wall in Trackmania, it has some strange properties, where for whatever reason, the game miscalculates your speed, and you can gain speed from the crash, which in some cases will send you flying. This is what's known as a Uberbug, and though the reason for why it happens isn't quite understood yet, it's what sent ores flying across the map and onto the finish road. The one problem with Uberbugs is that they are completely uncontrollable. The game can really launch you into any direction, and since you have no air control in Trackmania, you just have to hope to get sent towards where you want to go. In his own words, Ors managed to get the flight to the finish road on his 10th Uberbug. Overall, this was an incredible breakthrough on F9, a ramp flip into a sideways landing in order to bug slide into a Uberbug to make a Formula race car fly across the map. Absolutely stunning. Ors had raised the bar, and this was the new level of competition speedrunning was brought to on F9. This new shortcut beautifully coincided with another breakthrough in the Trackmania community, when just a few days later, the player Stingler developed a patch that made Trackmania Nations Esports World Cup work on Windows 7, 8, and 10. Thanks to him and his work, a game that had been almost unplayable for the past decade now had its doors wide open, and players rushed in to break any world records they could. Ors decided to give his shortcut idea a shot on the original F9, and after playing the track for 20 hours, he got this run.
Это Steven? Это конвой прапора. О! Military flash drive. Немножко не с той стороны спускаюсь. Ну ладно. О, я уже 60 патронов придернул. Нехорошо. Я планировал на 50 остановиться. Теперь у меня есть 5 патронов, чтобы кого-нибудь убить и забрать оружие. Так, где-то тут должен быть бункер. Так, я должен быть совсем близко. Вон он. Второй бункер у окраины. Я думаю, что я поднимусь на снайперскую скалу, полутаю ценности. Скорее всего, это кто-то уже сделал, но мало ли. Военный фильтр. раз я не сломаю ноги. Что-то изменилось определенно. Меня буквально толкнуло вперед. Кони, скорее всего, сейчас что-то стоят, потому что они используются для бартера на кейс для документов. Скоро они не будут стоить ничего. FMG. Отстой, я надеялся на ПСы. Сколько у меня навык владения снайперскими винтовками? Почти 2. 2 это неплохо. Где 2, там и 3. А 3 нужен для квеста. Бот, дай шину. Блин. Да какой вот он?
Тут нашего завалили!
Тебя завалят. О, дар. Может, еще и патроны хорошие? HP нет, патроны говно. Пойду поищу еду во временках на лесопилке. 25 минут, тут уже челоботы, наверное, бегают. Из-за перелома очень плохо видно. Плохо, что обезболивающий теперь не блокирует эффект боли. Мне кажется, это баг. Там кто-то бежит. Блин. Лутали, похоже. Да, все двери открыты. Блин. Я словил баг, из-за которого ты получаешь увеличенный урон чаще, когда бегаешь без ноги под бейсболом. Бандаж меня не спасет. Очень часто урон получаю. Ладно, я должен смочь добраться до бункера, остальное не важно. Хотя мне придется еще один вазелин использовать. Это уменьшит мою еду и воду. Мне сейчас уже немного. Я не могу себе позволить не использовать обезбол. Я буду слишком медленным. Я могу попробовать найти еду в домике егеря. Скорее всего, ее там уже залутали, правда? Возможно, там есть какая-то плохая еда, типа хлопьев. Меня это сейчас устроит. Или какой-нибудь плохой сок, который дает немного воды и еды. Это тоже вполне отлично. Кажется, бота видел проходящего. Да, вон он. Очень неприятно стрелять. Жесть. Это, похоже, челобот был. Да. Голова, челюсть. Очень плохой дроби причем. Ладно. Да, что-то день сегодня не задался.
.3882, beating twins by 0.8 seconds, and achieving the world record on both versions of the track. The fact that there was no airship on the original track made things a bit easier, as it wouldn't be blocking your flight towards the finish. And though Ors now had achieved both world records, the trajectories and the landings left some room for improvement, and a little bit more to be desired. Whenever there's a Uberbug shortcut on a Trackmania map, players often dream of the perfect Uber. Just a launch, up into the sky, and dropping directly into the finish. Across such a long distance, the chance to get sent perfectly into the finish is incredibly small. But on F9, some players were determined to beat the odds. Throughout the tail end of 2020, the player Monster was grinding TM and Race F9, chasing the perfect Uberbug. And on the 7th of January 2021, Monster got this run. .3749, improving the world record by 2.3 seconds, and almost soaring directly into the finish. On the original F9, Hardtack was also grinding the Uberbug, and on the 30th of July 2021, Hardtack got this run. .3732, which brought the world records on F9 to where they stand as of today. In theory, there's still a few more seconds to be gained on both versions, with a lower trajectory into the finishes. But when looking back through the track's history, it's crazy to think that all these shortcuts existed on the same 40-second long Trackmania track, and that in just 7 years, players have mastered all of them. And for all we know, perhaps there's an even faster shortcut out there. But for that, I guess we will just have to wait and see. F9 as it stands is already one of Trackmania's most shortcut tracks, and a pristine example of how far thinking outside the box will get you, and I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about its world record history. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider subscribing to the channel so you never miss
Так, через час прервемся. У него болтовка М700, если быть точным. Раздолбанная в хлам. М80. Валдами, к счастью, больше не нужна. Штурман. Есть все шансы его убить. Назло я нашел нужные мне сигареты. И умирать не очень хочется. В этой хреновине хороший прицел. Но она такая раздолбанная, что пули будут лететь не туда, куда надо целиться. Хороший ключ. Что такое? Остался один охранник и штурман.
Give up, bear! Look at this goddamn pussy! Piece of shit! Piece of shit. Fucking Ruskies.
Остался штурман.
Fucking Ruskies!
Он меня через стену попытался пристрелить, что ли?
Asshole! Bastard!
Ну чё ты там заткнулся-то, а чё? Чё ты подох, что ли?
Представляете, у штурмана еще нет своей озвучки. И я подумал, что это он. Да, утро вообще не задалось, конечно. Это просто ужас. Я, по-моему, выжил сегодня только один раз. Правда, с лидексом, но, блин. Я потратил гораздо больше денег, чем этот лидекс. Просто невероятное что-то. И как назло, я опять-таки не был застрахован. Я постоянно забываю страховаться. Сайбу, наверное, продам, недолюбливаю я ее. Так. Надо подумать. Надо что-то дешевое. Вот это должно быть дешевое. Идем. Вот опять нужно взять. Ладно, заберу все-таки гризли. Я думаю, что приклад еще надо сменить. Давайте попробуем. Надо заодно посмотреть, как прицел выглядит. Я его не припоминаю. Ну, кстати, нормально. Я думал, хуже будет. И мне надо флиску продать, которая найдена в рейде. Она будет достаточно дорого стоить. Но легче, конечно, сказать, чем найти ее здесь. Вот она. Все-таки приклад я поменяю, я думаю. Ну хотя бы вот так. Сколько она будет стоить? 27 меня устраивает. Так, мне нужна броня. В этот раз я, наверное, хочу взять что-то получше, чем 3 класс. Можно картоху взять. Я уже купил Максим. Можно вот эту дерьмо-керамику взять. Можно вот этот 3 класс. Ладно. Давайте так попробуем.
Hello, you absolute legends. When it comes to doing incredible, mind-bending things in video games, it's hard to top the or hasghasfghdasgfuyiewgttriwuyagdfjks sense. The level is as iconic as it gets. But the world of Doom speedrunning isn't just limited to the official releases of Doom that most of us have played. The modding scene is enormous. And on WOD Archive, there have been 93,000 WODs uploaded, each containing one or more custom levels. The Doom modding scene has a history so expansive that it would be difficult to even scratch the surface. Many of these WODs play like you would expect, as they attempt to capture the classical Doom feel. And historically, there have been custom WODs that were so impressive that id Software turned them into official releases, as was the case with Final Doom. But some WODs became popular just for being bizarre, and there is probably no better example than the infamous WOD called Nuts. Nuts was created in 2001 by the modder BPRD, and in 2003, Doomworld placed Nuts in its list of top 10 most infamous WODs. Doomworld described the WOD as follows. Think of a Doom map with a large amount of monsters. Now double that number. Now double it again. Now make all of those into cyber demons. Now add that same number, but make them all archviles. Okay, I think you get my point. Nuts is insane. And that's basically the only thing that made Nuts interesting. It's 2 large square areas filled with a ton of monsters. How many exactly? Well, in the first room, there's 196 former humans, 219 former sergeants, 1,426 imps, 1,395 chain gunners, 1,400 demons, 615 Baron of Hells, 237 Arachnotrons, 217 Hell Knights, and 1,758 Revenants. In the second area, we have 1,272 archviles, 237 mancubi, 795 spider masterminds, and 848 cyber demons, giving a grand total of 10,617 monsters. Despite the sheer amount of enemies, it's a relatively easy map to complete if you know how to do it. Fighting the monsters head-on is a lost cause, as even with perfect ammo management and the best possible luck, there just isn't enough ammo to kill everything. It's not even close. They honestly may as well have not given you a gun at all, as usually it won't help. Instead, the idea is to grab invulnerability spheres and run around the monsters, trying not to alert them as much as possible. The second large area is full of archviles which can blast you into the air. You would think this would be helpful, but one of the quirks of Doom programming is that enemies have infinite height, so you can't jump over them. The only way through is to get lucky and look for small gaps that may or may not appear. If the enemies crowd around you and block your path, which happens most of the time, there is simply nothing you can do. These days, the idea of creating a map with 2 rooms and a ton of monsters doesn't sound very interesting, but I guess when this map was created, the concept was a bit more novel. One of the appeals, if you could describe it as that, was the fact that in 2001, this map was basically unplayable. The insane amount of monsters was too taxing for computers, so the frame rate took a massive hit. The simplicity of the map, combined with the stupid amount of monsters and lack of computing power to play it well, basically made this map a joke. Modern source ports do allow nuts to run at a smooth frame rate, which is likely why we've seen the speedrunning record lowered dramatically in recent years. Within weeks of the map being released, the player SB set a time of 1 minute and 3 seconds. This would last 10 years before being lowered by Neuro to 42 seconds. 2013 saw Memphis achieve a 37, which would last another full 7 years. Over the past 2 years, the record has been mainly lowered by Hurricane Jr. with an appearance from Tidri. The record currently stands at 32 seconds set by Hurricane Jr. on the 6th of March 2021. The strategy is simple. Run around the enemies in the first room, then try to run through the monsters in the second room to reach the exit switch. Strategically, the run contains no real skill and relies entirely on monster RNG. Almost every single time, you will get blasted into a corner by archviles and get surrounded with no chance of escape. Okay, so beating the level is one thing, but UV speed, which is the category for simply finishing the level as fast as possible, isn't the only category speedrunners compete in. UV max is also very popular. This is the category where you need to collect every secret and kill every monster. Nuts doesn't have any secrets, so getting 100% is pretty easy here, but killing every monster is a different story. On the Doom Speed Demos archive page for the Nuts WOD, the UV max record stands at 4 minutes and 26 seconds. But it also shows something that you don't normally see, which is a percentage of the kills, which was 92. Basically, Doom speedrunners realized pretty quickly that it wasn't possible to kill everything on the map, so they settled for a simple rule. As long as everything except for the cyber demons were killed, it was considered a successful UV max run. In order to demonstrate just how impossible it is to get 100% kills, we can do some simple math. The map contains 848 cyber demons, each having 4,000 hit points. The level gives us 2 main weapons to use, the plasma gun and the BFG 9000. The BFG has a much higher damage output, so that's what we'll be using. The actual damage of the BFG is random, but the maximum theoretical damage per blast is 4,280. The level contains 31 energy cells, each having 100 ammo. Combined with 40 ammo you get when picking up the BFG and plasma gun plus the backpack, this gives us a total of 3,200 ammo. This is enough ammo for 80 BFG blasts, which would enable us to kill
Хотя бы застраховаться не забыл.
Сосредоточьтесь.
Я бейсбол не взял. Вот это ошибка большая. Попробую добыть бейсбол на МЧС. У меня довольно большая огневая мощь. Я, по идее, должен убить ЧВКшников, которые там будут. Я опоздал на 3 минуты. Кто-то уже на такси вышел. Так, если ЧВКшник есть внутри, он обо мне знает. У ЧВКшника Мосин. Убил.
Страшно тебе, сука? Ты где? Чё, обосрался?
Все, что я залутал, нужно срочно положить в жопу. Всё.
Блядь, ебать в него! Страшно тебе, сука?
Блин, сигарета жалко из прошлого рейда, конечно. Тут у него уже оружие. А, это, видимо, тот бот, с которого он слутал дробовик. Опа. Мне бы рюкзак больше найти. Блин. Не вижу. Там еще ЧВКшник сидит. Может, конечно, бот кинул гранату. Но рассчитывать на это нельзя. Вепрь-хантер. С другой стороны, граностай, по-моему. вполне вероятно, что мы встретимся с этим пистолетчиком. Вот и пистолетчик на домике диких. Вот я думаю, пойти его убить или сначала заложить еду с водой. Вообще я хочу его убить. А вот, кстати, человек с горностаем. Вон он. В домик забежал. Блин, это бот был. Ладно, если это был бот, тогда плевать. Тогда я просто иду, закладываю. Потом уже разберемся. Тут убили. Это, наверное, залутали. Это вот. Мне нужна броня получше. О, кстати, вон мотор лежит в правом нижнем углу. Надо бы его забрать. Блин, я не вижу его в этой траве. Где? Попал. Ты ёпрст, это сколько вас тут?
Вылезай давай, нахрен вылезай! Давай, ноги!
Опа. О, он убил массиниста.
Эй, ты куда пошел?
Еще один.
Попал его!
Да, подпрыгнул я знатно, конечно. Стоп, а у меня заложилась икра с галкой? Твою дивизию. Я бы ее за 30 тысяч почти продал. А где он? Где-то тут, разве нет? Ладно, пофиг. Может быть, вот здесь. Вон он. Еще один. Я магазин потерял. Блин, я думал, у меня есть слот свободный. Ладно. Там хороших патронов не было, так что не критично. Этого бота потрогаю и бегу. Хорошо. Остался один уровень для снайперских винтовок.
A grand total of 85 cyber demons, leaving us with a mere 763 to deal with. But remember, this is using the theoretical maximum damage output, which won't happen. And we completely neglected the first room of the map, which houses a ton of monsters as well. The alpha males out there may be yelling at their computer screens, shouting, "Who cares if you don't have ammo? Just punch them to death." If you did want to take that route, assuming every single punch connected and you somehow didn't die, you would be able to kill them all in several days. The only person I've ever heard of that might have the skill to pull something like this off would be Todd Rogers in his prime, who was well known for his totally legit and definitely not fabricated multiple-day marathons. But unfortunately, since the invention of proof standards, he's been oddly quiet, so I don't think we can rely on him to get this done. In reality though, punching these cyber demons would probably take weeks, as you would need to spend most of your time avoiding rockets, and that if it's even possible to survive that long. There is one other factor that we do need to consider though, which is monster infighting. Doom monsters will try to kill each other, so if we do let them have it out, how many are left standing? The section with the cyber demons contains 795 spider masterminds, 240 mancubi, and 1272 archviles. This sounds like a lot, but in practice, they get wiped out almost instantly. Archviles and mancubi have a fraction of the health of cyber demons and stand no chance. Spider masterminds have a decent amount of health, but they fire a hit scan weapon, which means that it can injure other spider masterminds, so they end up annihilating each other in the crossfire. The splash damage that archviles create also injures other archviles, mancubi, and spider masterminds. Cyber demons are not only too strong for their competitors, but given that they can't harm each other, they have a massive advantage. When all is said and done, the other monsters hardly put a dent in the cyber demon count, with hundreds upon hundreds left standing at the end. The task seems insurmountable. But there was one man, one legend, who dared to dream. And that legend was none other than Zero Master. Zero Master had a plan, and if it worked, it should be able to get the job done in around 6 hours. It seemed good in theory, but unfortunately in practice, things didn't go quite as expected. Now, the speedrun we are about to look at is tool assisted. It's basically a theoretical demonstration of what might be possible. But the funny thing is the lengths that Zero Master needed to take in order to even produce this. The strategy is relatively simple. He would utilize homing rockets from the revenants in the first room to kill the cyber demons in the second room. Every time a revenant fires a rocket, there is a 25% chance that it's a homing rocket, which will follow you around indefinitely until it hits something. Luckily for us, there is no limit to the amount of rockets that can be stuck chasing you, which ends up being important as once you drop down into the second room, there is no going back. So if this plan was to work, you'd need to have collected enough rockets to kill every single cyber demon in one go. So how many rockets exactly would you need? Well, again, we can do some basic math. It's hard to calculate exactly how many cyber demons will be left alive at the end, so just to be sure, we'll take the maximum number, which is 848. At 4,000 hit points each, this gives us a total hit point count of 3,392,000. Revenant rockets do random damage between 10 and 80, giving us an average of 45 damage per rocket. 3,392,000 divided by 45 results in a total of 75,377 rockets. However, in practice, you'd never only get this amount, as there would be a 50% chance of not having enough. So just to be sure, you would always want to get more. We also can't use the existing ammo to take out cyber demons, as we'll end up needing that in the first room. If you do try to let monster infighting do all the work, the revenants will end up being destroyed by the barons. Thus, Zero Master's first mission in the first room is to kill everything but the revenants in order to help them survive. After several minutes of combat, he is left with a ball of revenants. At some point, he also initiates infighting in the second room. Here is where the general strategy is performed. Luckily, the first room is huge, which allows Zero Master to circle the revenants going from corner to corner, accumulating rockets. The process takes a bit longer than you would expect because only the front line of the ball can actually add to the rocket pile, as the rockets fired from behind will hit the revenants in the front and detonate. I previously mentioned that this process of gathering homing rockets should take around 6 hours, but it becomes apparent early on that we have a problem. Each rocket emits several smoke sprites behind it, and as the amount of rockets builds up, the processing power required to keep them all updated becomes enormous. After only a short time, the frame rate begins to plummet. I have a pretty good computer, and after 45 minutes of watching Zero Master's demo, it was going at this speed. And after 2 hours, it looked like this, running at about 2 frames per second. I stopped the demo here, but just know that it only gets worse the further it goes. At its worst, the frame rate drops down to 1 frame every 3.5 seconds, which is 122 times slower than the game normally runs. So while it might theoretically take only a few hours to get enough rockets, in practice, the process takes weeks. Yes, weeks. Obviously, Zero Master wasn't going to sit there for an accumulated total of weeks playing a game at 1 frame every several seconds, so he needed to be creative. He perfectly mapped out the required inputs and copy and pasted them into the demo file so that it could play itself. And when I say perfectly, I really do mean perfectly, as any small discrepancy would lead to everything going out of whack and the rockets being destroyed. He needed to make sure the time spent in each corner was exactly the same, or the revenants would start drifting to the side, which would ruin everything. With the run programmed, now he just had to wait. Ultimately, Zero Master would need to let the game run for a total of 23 days, before there were enough rockets, at which point he could take back the controls. That's 552 hours of gameplay that happened that no one was there to witness. But we do know that it happened because the demo exists. So if you have a spare month, you can go and watch it for yourself. In total, he had amassed around 90,000 rockets, which should almost certainly be enough. The only thing left to do now is to chaperone the rockets into the second area to explode on the awaiting cyber demons. This process was a terrible one, as the game was still running at 1 frame.
Так, 220-я комната трехэтажной общаги. И как раз довольно удачный спаун. Есть только один спаун, который может быть быстрее меня. Он примерно на таком же расстоянии, но со стороны трешки.
Just fucking die already!
Кто-то тут бегает. Решала.
Сука, ёбнули нашего!
Решала, убили. Нет, не убили. Кто ты? Их там еще и двое было. Я супер неудачно в него начал стрелять. У меня оружие сместилось в сторону. Что-то вообще день не пошел, честно
Frame
говоря.
every
До
several
ужаса просто.
seconds. And this time, autopilot wasn't an option. Zero Master had to literally play the game at this atrocious speed. Mind you, the video of the ending is showing the run at 35 frames per second and doesn't reflect what actually happens when you try to play like this. The video itself also took 25 days to create because the program that creates videos from demo files needs to run through the demo just like the game does. Before going into the second area, a critical part of the strategy is to lure the cyber demons away from the entrance of the room, or they will simply block your path, not allowing you in. So Zero Master spent some time running back and forth along the side wall. After a sufficient amount of time and the cyber demons have moved, it's time to drop down into the second area. As Zero Master herds rockets into cyber demons and the rocket count diminishes, the frame rate begins to slowly improve. But this was pure hell. He had to somehow survive rockets from hundreds of cyber demons while carefully guiding the homing rockets into them, and doing this while playing at less than 1 frame per second. In total, the final 10 minutes of the run took more than 20 hours of physical labor to produce. Once all of these cyber demons have been killed, Zero Master uses his remaining ammo to take out the surviving revenants and finishes the level. The final in-game time was 5 hours, 52 minutes, and 34 seconds. But if you try to play this demo, the real time will be almost an entire month. What I find fascinating about this speedrun is that the level itself isn't even an official release. It's literally just some random map a modder made as a joke in 2001. It was never meant to be taken seriously.
Так, это, наверное, последний рейд перед перерывом. Где? Теперь я — это ты. Все, что было твоим, становится моим. Нет, 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 быстрее. Очень дорогой ключ, который нужен к квесту, блокирующим дальнейшие квесты этого Регмана. Где? Досадный промах. Ай-яй-яй, сгущенку я больше не достану. Чего он так не прет-то сегодня?
Заметь, если хочешь.
Успел таки мне руку выбить, гад. Не это 200. Да что такое? Это лучше. Это, по-моему, последние сигареты Страйк, которые мне нужны. Потому что одни еще лежат в схроне не сданные. Так, здесь мне нужно две вещи. Раз. Два. Кажется, все-таки сверху. Да. Или нет? А, собака. Ладно, пойду я займусь делами. То это что-то невероятное, может быть, после перерыва лучше будет.
До свидания.